Ladies and gentlemen, Sonny Hostin thinks ancient Greece was a black thing.
This idea was also explored in a book called Black Athena. I think people should read it, which argues that classical Greek culture is heavily indebted to Afro-Asiatic and Near Eastern roots.
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and it's probably going to be a problem when Sonny Hostin cites a book, and sure enough, it's a problem here. Black Athena is a pseudo-history that maintains that Africa had a decisive influence on ancient Greece. This has been widely debunked. It is total nonsense. I want to go into why, and then also get into a little bit the underlying controversy here, because Hostin is only talking about this because there's a debate over whether it's proper or not to have a black actress play Helen of Troy in the new Christopher Nolan movie version of the Odyssey. More Hostin.
I actually taught Greek mythology to 8th graders. And so I covered this.
Fun fact.
So people that are saying that Helen of Troy could not possibly be played by a black woman don't know history.
Now, this book that she's so taken with, again, is called Black Athena. The first volume came out in the late 1980s by a late scholar named Martin Burnell, who argues that ancient Greece was colonized by ancient Egypt and Phoenicia. So that's where it all ultimately came from, Africa, basically. Now, nothing against ancient Egypt and Phoenicia, which were incredible places and civilizations in their own right, but this just didn't happen. He tries to muster linguistic evidence for it. He reads ancient myths to support this idea. He calls his theory the ancient model because supposedly this notion was accepted in antiquity, and calls the more established model the Aryan model. He thinks the people who advance this idea are horrible Eurocentrics, and throws that phrase out there, Aryan model, to create the idea, well, these might have been proto-Nazis. And this is just accepted by no respectable scholar, really. Here's some review material. Consider this quote. One expert wrote in 1999, by my rough estimate, negative scholarly reviews of Black Athena have outweighed positive or moderate ones by a margin of approximately 7-3. It might be inferred that this ratio testifies to the inherent implausibility of Burnell's hypotheses. After all, an ideological disparate collection of academicians concur that Burnell's theories are simply untenable, yet the existence of the scholarly consensus must be qualified by one telling fact. What is significant, note this, is that the majority of Burnell's defendants have emanated from the radical tier of the academic world. Well, that makes sense, right? Suggests this is a radical politicized thesis and only radicals are willing to entertain and accept it. Here's a little bit more. This is from another study of the reaction. Actually, what seems even more significant, if one continues to believe in the existence of scholarly expertise and authority, is that most of Burnell's positive reviews were written by people who are not scholars of the classics, Egyptology, ancient Near Eastern history studies, archaeology, or European intellectual history. Then there's the excoriating take of a great historian named David Gress, who wrote a wonderful book once called From Plato to NATO. He makes the point that no one rejects Egyptian influence when there's evidence of it. The truth is that the classicists had no problem whatsoever with Linear B, nor with Egyptian influence on Mycenae. What they could not and cannot accept, however, is continuity of Afro-Asiatic influences across the Dark Age, not because they're racist, but because all the evidence is against it. Burnell's denunciations, delivered with a uniformly spiteful tone, give his work the same moral and scholarly status as the Aryan science of the Third Reich or the Lysenkoite genetics of Stalinist Russia. That is, none whatsoever. So it's hilarious to think of Sonny Hostin foisting this ridiculous book on unsuspecting 8th graders who think they're learning something about ancient Greece. Instead, they're getting fed propaganda. But that aside, what about the underlying question here? Helen of Troy in the new Christopher Nolan movie. Now, we know Helen is one of the most famous figures in Western literature. Daughter of Zeus, she's married to the king of Sparta, then she runs off with or is abducted by Paris of Troy, and this horrible war ensues. Nolan has decided to cast the actress Lupita Nyong'o as Helen. Elon Musk and others have strongly criticized this decision. So what about it? What do we know about how Helen of Troy looked? Well, we don't know a lot, because this is the genius of the depiction of her, right? We're just told by Homer that she's beautiful, but otherwise the description is left vague. It's left up to our imagination. She's kind of a symbol. We do hear a couple things about her over and over again. These are kind of tropes in ancient literature. She's white-armed and she's lovely haired. Now, white armed is not just pale skinned, it implies you're a noble woman because you're not out in the fields getting tan all day long. And lovely haired may suggest kind of golden haired. Certainly, Sappho, the poet, uses a word for her hair that suggests it's somewhere between blonde and reddish. You have other ancient poets saying that she had piercing blue eyes. So since a lot of people in Greece would have dark hair and dark eyes, these are different qualities that are kind of sought after and maybe associated with the gods. Certainly, the depictions of her in art down through the centuries have emphasized proportionality and luminous skin. Here's the painting The Abduction of Helen by the Italian Renaissance painter Guido Reni. Then we have the borderline not safe for work depiction by David. That's called The Loves of Paris and Helen. Then we get the depictions on film and on TV. We have the Italian actress Rosanna Podesta, played Helen in a movie of the same name in 1956. She was naturally a brunette, but played a blonde Helen. There's a miniseries in 2003. Sienna Gullery played Helen in that, also blonde. And then in the epic Troy, also starring Brad Pitt as Achilles, we have Diane Kruger playing Helen. So there's definitely a certain kind of type there, right? But it doesn't mean that every director or producer has to stay within that mold. Let's see the movie and let's see whether she pulls this off. If Denzel Washington, say, can be a great Macbeth, why can't she be Helen of Troy? Let's just see the movie. But that doesn't mean that Elon Musk raising objections is inherently racist, because we should have a uniform standard here, right? Every time there's a white actor or actress cast in a minority role, it's a huge scandal. There's an enormous uproar. People have to apologize and maybe quit the movies. Scarlett Johansson has been hit by a couple of these firestorms in recent years. Here's a headline from the magazine Allure back in 2019. Scarlett Johansson is facing major backlash for saying she should be allowed to play anyone. She's an actress, right? Which inherently involves pretending to be something you're not. So she got in trouble because she was cast in an Asian role, and then she was going to be cast in a trans role, and she's not trans. She eventually had to quit that project. So if we're going to be okay with an African American in the role of Helen of Troy, let's also be okay with the likes of Scarlett Johansson in some role that's not necessarily white. And by the way, let's do away with this ridiculous racial bean counting in terms of Oscar eligibility, something else that Elon Musk has highlighted. A piece in the publication Variety responding to Elon Musk set out how you have to meet two of these standards. Standard A, on-screen representation, themes, and narratives. At least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group, blah, blah, blah. Standard B, creative leadership and project team, kind of same thing. You need someone or a couple people from underrepresented groups, and then these other standards, industry access, audience development. So if those are the rules, of course, you're going to create suspicions about why you're casting minorities in certain roles. In general, we should just be less race obsessed, and that very much includes Sunny Hostin, not suggesting for ideological and racialist reasons that ancient Greece was black. Hey, do yourself a favor, comment, like, subscribe. I guarantee you won't regret it. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.